Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. My name is Leonard Brackett. I will be your chairman for tonight, Friday. Uh, this is the Belizean Affairs Show number 282. 282. We're running a few minutes late, but we're happy to be here and engage with the process. And we hope that whatever we bring to you tonight will be of some public positive benefit to you, for Belizeans at home and abroad, and others. Obviously, being Friday, we deal with constitutional as well as legal and case law matters and other issues. Uh, I'll be the chairman for tonight, as I indicated earlier, and currently I don't see any of our other panelists in the background and or available for tonight as yet. Uh, we hope that they might grace us with their presence, and failing to do so, when if it's for some emergency or some other justifiable reason, I mean, we can't tell what's going on with other people's lives on a day-to-day basis, and what's, you know, when things are possible and not. But in this instance, I'm present, and I'll have to just do the best I can under the circumstance. I will probably give you a very good program, even though maybe a little disjointed, because I'll have to be taking care of all the housekeeping as well as presenting the programs. So I'll just beg your indulgence. And here we go. As usual, we start our programs with a short prayer, after which we do a short reading, and then we launch into some public commentary, and then the formal program. I'll bow my head for a couple of minutes and say a short prayer. Divine loving Father, thou who art the creator of heaven and earth and all that in them are, as well as being our creator, Lord and Savior, we come before thee, asking that thou would continue to abide with us, give us health, strength, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, magnanimity, as well as a bit of forbearance. Also, we pray that thou mayest grant us a bit of fortitude to be able to endure the processes that our country and the world is going through, and still be able to have the veracity to speak truth to power when need be. We pray that thou mayest continue to bless our family members, friends, and loved ones, wherever they are. Thou knowest them by name and number. Thou knowest our hearts, our desires, and even our most secret thoughts. We pray that thou mayest continue to abide with us. Bless my country of Belize, its people and leadership. Bless this country of the United States, its people and leadership as well. Bless the rest of humanity, we pray, dear loving Father. Those who have need of food, clothes, shelter. Those who are in hurricane, uh, um, tornadoes, fires, um, earthquakes, and many other natural disasters, as well as man-made disasters in case of wars and other devastation being wrought on the face of this earth. Please guide and protect and bless us. Help us as we deliver this program this evening, that it may accrue some positive benefit to others and to their honor and glory as well. For we ask these mercies in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you very much. I'll ask you for forbearance once more, so that I can indulge in another part of our regular programming, which is to read a small portion of one of our Bible books. And I'll just indulge in reading from Job chapter 14, and I'll start at verse 1. It reads as follows: Man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble. He cometh forth like a flower, and it's cut down. He fleeth also as a shadow, and continues not. That is to say, we human beings, according to a human construct, we believe that maybe, we shouldn't have to be worried about no other beings superior to us. That is that we are born, allowed to live in this world, and we have the master of our own destiny and the purpose for which we are created. Therefore, there's no need to believe in anything that is greater than us, otherwise we might get scared. And at the end of the day, we might flee from our own shadows. That's basically what that scripture was referring to just now. I used to have a tendency when I was much younger and a bit more vigorous. The tendency was to entertain discussions and inquiry from other people that I would meet. And I'll keep asking them this question, what is life? And my grandmother told me, or she gave me an answer once that I won't repeat right now on the show. But for all intents and purposes, it made me a bit more curious and more interested in wanting to find out really what was life. Of course, when the older people give you knowledge or information or thoughts of wisdom, you should take it with a grain of salt and make sure that you take the good out of the bad and make use of the good and dispense with the bad. But as kids, we used to take the bad out of the good and make use of the bad and forget about the good. Unfortunately, I was able to grow up fast enough to realize that wasn't the way or a part of life that would have led me to where I'm at today. But nevertheless, my point is, a lot of people claim they don't believe in God. In fact, even the atheists, they claim that they don't believe in God, failing themselves to realize the fact that atheism is a religion unto itself. And while they claim not to believe in God, they believe in human beings as being the most sentient entities in the universe. And I always ask them this tickling question, right? That is to say, and then how much energy did any human being exerted in order to create what we now know is the rest of the universe? And at every step of the way, they keep on expanding the limits and the expanse of the universe to the point where we can now correctly state that the universe did not come about by any effort expended on the part of human beings, but that universe that we can look out there and now realize is much more wider and expansive than anything else that current human beings and past human beings ever imagined. Such as, for example, now with our modern telescopes, we can see billions of stars. We can see billions of galaxies. We cannot see the trillions of globes that circle those galaxies, but we know that every star has at least one accompanying body other than the star itself. That is to say, some other globe or some other entity. So if we have 1 trillion stars that we can look at right now, and we're only looking at, whenever we look at the universe in terms of measurement, most of the time people are saying that they only can perceive one little piece at a time. They have no knowledge as to really how many stars exist, because we only can count those that we can see. But every so often they come up with a new modern technology to see further and further into deep space. And they keep expanding on their knowledge and awareness about what space is and how much the universe keeps expanding according to them. They fail to realize that the universe is not expanding, going anywhere. Didn't start from no Big Bang and kept on going. The universe was here before we ever came up on the face of this earth. But they don't want to give any consideration to the idea that some other sentient beings that are much more powerful than us expended some energy or effort into bringing about all those things that we are now finally recognizing. The bottom line is that we either believe in ourselves and don't believe in something else more powerful than ourselves, or we believe in something more powerful than ourselves and fail to believe in ourselves. And I don't think that none of those options is the reality. But the truth of the matter is that we cannot claim to be the only sentient beings in this universe or in this world or in this solar system or in this galaxy, much less the only sentient being in the whole of what is now known as the universe. Nevertheless, that's not my topic for the night. It was just a provoking thought that I decided to put out there, Going back to our program for tonight, first of all, I would like to ask your indulgence to just give me an opportunity to launch the other part of our program on the other platforms. I just need about a minute and a half, 2 minutes more at the most, to be able to connect this stuff quickly. Because I can only do this connection on the other part of the program once I start the original base of the program. Then I can use that to expand on the other platforms. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. So please bear with me. I normally do this when Mr. Wade is doing the Bible reading or when we're doing some other activity. But right now I got to attempt to do it on my own while the program is being disjointed. Let me see. That's taken care of. Take it off of that. Make it public. That's done. And one other option I need to. Okay. Okay. One I need to do the editing here quickly. Now 30 seconds and I should be finished. Let's see. Quick. Let me see number 2. I just need to put this before I forget. Okay. 2, 5. 16, 18, 18, okay. 2024. Okay, we're finished with that. Thank you very much for your patience. Now, our program for tonight will consist of some constitutional matters as well as some case law issues, some of which are still ongoing because even though the case itself, the case proper has been litigated and all the arguments have been completed, the judge took the case into submission for a ruling to be issued just about any time right now. We had expected it to be issued about a week after the final submissions were had and arguments were had. And a week has passed, and we are now going into the next week. So, presumably, sometime this week, it might be issued or at maybe some other future date. I don't know how long it's going to be. But now that the matter has been dealt with in the courts and there are no more arguments to be had, at least not unless they get an adverse ruling and they decide to appeal. But in the interim, we are now free to speak to these matters and deal with them from our own vantage point as compared to when the matter was live in court and we were under judicial. Well, there was not a what they call it. It, it was not a case where you can't speak to the matters because there was no such order given. But out of deference and due respect to the court procedures and protocols, we found ourselves limiting our interest in advocating or speaking to those matters proper. We spoke around in circles, in bits and pieces of those issues as the case went on. But now, as I said, since the case is closed, now we can go full bore ahead. We mash anybody's corn, or we offend anybody's sensibilities, then an apology from us, I don't think, is enough. They can just go ahead and do what they feel like. But this is my job. I've taken up this opportunity or this privilege to be a vanguard of my country. And I have a right to speak to any of the issues that ails me or people of my country. And I will not be silent when I can see through what is being attempted to be done and just sit on the side, shut my mouth, and let whatever be or become. No. If I have to throw myself in the middle of the gears of that machine to cause it to stop, and if not stop, at least to interrupt its progress, then that's what I'm about. Nevertheless, I'll go into. We had a situation where from 1996, 97 thereabout, I would say more closer to 96 than 97, there was the need for what is called a redivisioning and a reapportionment of the electorate in my country of Belize. That is that in Belize, it's a small country in Central America, and it's actually located on the bottom part of Yucatan, on the mainland. But it's a Caribbean-oriented country located actually in Central America per se, because its neighbors, its physical neighbors, are the Caribbean Sea, the Mexican Republic of Mexico, the Republic of Guatemala. I'll read some citations here, first of all. I was about just now to explain why is it that I'm at this point in dealing with this matter and what the matter was actually about for those who may not know or are not on top of the details. On or about 1996-97, when the election was coming due, there should have been a reapportionment, but the government did not find it fit to take on that task because they were claiming that they were under economic duress and they could not come up with the money to undertake that task. At the time, there was no computerized systems available then as they are now in terms of these particular undertaking, and it wouldn't have been that cheap. So it, the way they used to do it back then, it was laborious. A lot of manual labor and a lot of effort has to be put into achieving the objective. So from then until now, that matter needed to be taken into consideration and dealt with. And everybody that offers themselves to become elected officials in the country, to then become the government, offer that if they become elected, they will see to it that that matter is undertaken and dealt with correctly. The present government that we have in office has gone through two unconstitutional and illegal elections at that, and which is where we are today in terms of all that has been happening before. They all keep promising and they never fulfill. So this particular government that is in power right now, before they got elected one term ago, which is like 5, 6 years ago, they offered that if the people would elect them, they will see to it that that matter is taken care of. As a matter of fact, they were blaming the previous government that was in power before them for being so shady and not fulfilling their obligation according to the Constitution and the rights of the people. They won that election, they served that term, and subsequent to that, they continued bastardizing the Constitution and went on to do another election, which they won again, two elections in a row now, under the same bastardized process of non-compliance to the constitutional requirements and vindicating the right of the people according to our laws. So some private individuals decided that they was going to take this matter into hand and sue the government to try and get them to comply with the Constitution and the laws of the country. And there come these jackals, members of the government, turning around and using the purse, the public purse, which is to say the treasury of the country, to defend themselves. At least that's what the Prime Minister claimed. He had to defend himself and the government because these people were coming after him. Those people should not have to come after him to the courts to force him to do what he is mandated to do and what he is collecting a salary to do. He is violating the Constitution. He's taking money on the false pretense for a job that he's not fulfilling. Now, I know that if somebody takes a piece of bread from a shop or shoplift some piece of food or something or some item from a store, they haul them into court and quickly send them to jail. And they spend more money on the item that the person was probably trying to steal. But these high-powered jackals and hyenas and rascals and scofflaws, they don't arrest themselves, and they keep on being, committing crimes under the color of law, and nobody takes them to task or takes them to jail. So now they turn around and use our money to fight the people that wanted them to, in the first place, do the right thing without having to have any fight in the first place. But that was another scheme that allowed them to hire their big law firm bodies to get hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the treasury again for payment for services that they was going to be rendering to the government to go and provide legal support to the government, when in fact we have an attorney general and his minions. We have a solicitor general, a deputy solicitor general, and a bunch of other what you call crown counsels, and a bunch of other lawyers. So there was no need for the government to go and hire the most expensive law firms in the country. Two of them, by the way, to fight these people who didn't even have money basically to take care of their own basic needs, but were so patriotic and so concerned that the government for all these decades have been doing the same shenanigan and wanted the matter resolved. And the only way you could get that particular matter resolved is to find a way to come up with the money to hire a lawyer to go to court and to have the court pronounce judgment, which these people attempted. But nevertheless, like I said, the case has been heard finally. It has been dragged on for so long. It was heard, and the judge reserved judgment or his ruling to be issued at any time, as I said. Uh, the case was case number 730 of 2024 of the Belize High Court, or the Supreme Court of Belize. I wrote an article in which I stipulated some constitutional citations that were relevant to this particular case. And I'd like to take the privilege right now to cite a few of them. I will want to, at some point, read part of the submittals that was made in terms of the case, but I don't want to do that on the front part of the case, which is normally the way it should be done, and then these citations should be done in support of the particular case. I want to do it in reverse now. And there's a justifiable, valid purpose for my attempting to do it like that. In other words, there's a reason and a purpose for my madness. That is to say, my madness being that I'm turning the cart upside down. Why? Because I want to shake out all the change that's in the corners of the pocket. I want it to be seen and known by any and everyone who's interested enough to know about these things and to lay bare all the connivances, the travesties, the illegalities, the bastardization of the law, and apparently the indebtedness of these lawyers that we have, or these judges that we have, who behave with these legal processes as if they are suborned or as if they can't abide by the laws by which they are supposed to be ruling, because judges don't make laws. They are supposed to rule according to the laws. And the primary law that they're supposed to be ruling according to is the Constitution of the country to which they belong. So that statement is a general statement, universally accepted as a principle of jurisprudence. Judges do not make law. If they have the right judicial temperament, they will abide by what is expected of them, and that is to rule according to law. Not to bastardize the Constitution or to bastardize the law or the legal system or the legal process. As a matter of fact, the Constitution goes to the point where it allows for mistakes to be made by judges. But that doesn't mean that they should be making deliberate misjudgment and then have to have their case overturned, overruled by higher courts, appellate courts. It shouldn't have to be like that. But we're not coming up with nothing new. It's not a new principle or a new idea or a new thought that I'm projecting out there when I'm saying that judges aren't supposed to comport themselves, in ways that brings their jurisprudence and their judgment into question. Let me just go ahead and get into the reading of what I was attempting to do just now. I have a tendency to comment or make commentaries or statements in regards to what is it that I try to present when I present them. And part of that is because this particular platform is intended as a teaching tool, especially as regards to the Constitution of Belize, which is now on the chopping block to be eviscerated and, or at the least, to be modified substantively to get it to a point where these jackals can have us, the population of the country, stand in the breach on their behalf, commit sedition on their behalf, and then they turn around and take the powers of the country into their pockets, only to continue misusing and abusing us the way they have done in the past, are doing now, and are hoping to do in the future. All they're interested in is to corner the powers that will allow them to rule as autocrat, when in fact the country is declared to be a democracy. Democracy and authoritarianism does not always coexist. One has to give. And like I say, I have this tendency to always like to comment and expand my thoughts. And sometimes, I take up a lot of time on people. My reason for doing that is because as somebody who studies human behavior to the extreme, I know that not all of us are at the same station in life in terms of our knowledge, in terms of our acquired skills, in terms of our ability to rationalize or understand certain issues, especially if they are technical issues. So I always find myself inclining to over overspeak or over explain, or explain some things in a certain way and then go back and try to explain it in another way, because we all have different levels and interests and capacities. We're not all we don't all born knowing what we need to learn. And so every once in a while you'll find that I go into my teaching mode, and I want to be able to allow for the maximum amount of people to understand what is it I'm advocating or verbalizing. So I just beg your indulgence to, bear with me because of my bad habits. But I promise you that at the end of the day, when we present our programs, you will always be the better for having give us your time and attention. I'm apologizing, by the way, as I think you're recognizing, right? I hope you realize that that was an apology ahead of time, because, I'm just telling you how I operate and what I do, so that you can see sometime when I go into the over explanation, explaining this, explaining that, and I'm contextualizing, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm not dropping too many people as we travel this journey. Because at the end of the day, as regards to the Constitution of Belize, which is the supreme law of our land, it may turn out that for not too long in the future, we will have a different supreme law of the land, which would be something that just comes out of anybody's back pocket. Okay? And that's why I'm struggling against in presenting these programs and trying to educate my people for them to be able to be as knowledgeable about our Constitution as is possible within the time left, for them to have to cast a vote to decide what is it that is in the Constitution that they want to take out, or what is it that they want to put in. That's a tall order for lawyers, much less the average citizen or the average person, who some of them, are living at 60% poverty rate. Once we used to have the highest level of educated people in almost in the world. We used to have 98% literacy. That is down now into numbers that are below 50%. That's untenable. But let me stop my bad habits. I go back to read the rest of the information here. It says, Belize Constitution violations. For example, Section 90 of the Constitution and the ROPA, which means the ROPA Schedule 1, which is referred to when they say ROPA. It's an acronym, but it means Representation of the People's Act. That's how it's classified in our Constitution. In other words, our Constitution in Belize is made up of what you call acts, constitutional acts. And whenever they want to modify any of those acts, They have to go through a certain process, and they can only get to the end of that process legitimately so by following certain procedures, protocols, precepts, practices, and legal tenets. Okay? It's not like in some country that anybody can just get up and say, well, I want to abolish certain part of the constitution, and by the end of the day, that's a done deal. It doesn't work like that in my country. In Belize, we have a legal system that came out of the British system, which is over 1,200 years old. And we in this modern society are now being the beneficiary of all that legal mumbo jumbo. So it's not that easy for anybody to just get a group of people together overnight, especially if they're not, many of them are not lawyers or legally trained or don't understand legal structures and draftsmanship of legal processes. The bottom line is that we have a good thing right now, and there are ways to amend it or to modify it. As a matter of fact, the Constitution itself authorizes the House of Representatives to be able to amend the Constitution by following the correct precepts, processes, and protocols. And by the way, it's not all the Constitution that is amendable. There are certain portions of the Constitution that cannot be written out of law or out of existence. And there are theories also of law, right, that cannot be written out of existence. That is that they have been in existence, like I said, for over 1,200 years, and they still hold fast. But here we got in our country of Belize a bunch of neophyte jackals who wants to grab power for themselves and have no idea as to how to go about doing it properly, constitutionally, or legally. And they want to bamboozle the whole country into submission to allow them to change our country from being a British Commonwealth country, an independent country, whose territorial integrity has been accepted by the United Nations as being viable and justifiable. But still, we have some people in our country at the highest level of our government who are traitors and treacherous people who are trying to put us in a situation where we become not just only independent, but they don't help the country to develop a military for its defense. They don't help the country to develop a navy for its defense, an air force for its defense. No, they want us as a pauper, a defenseless pauper. They don't help the country to develop economically, to be able to afford to pay the teachers and all the other rest of civil servants them their salaries on time and give them their increments as they are deserving, instead of taking away 10% of their salary. While the people at the highest level in government, like the CEOs them and all other people, are getting 20 and 30% increase in salary. And it's all being done legally. Okay? While they're raising taxes and they're giving big concessions to these big multi-billionaire companies for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, tax-free. And then they use the people as modern slaves in order to generate the income with which to take care of the business of the country. They give these companies tax-free breaks because these companies hobnob with them and give them a little something in their pocket every once in a while for election campaigns, or maybe on a personal basis as well. To hell with the country. And I say, not while I'm still alive. I'll continue the reading. I compiled a series of constitutional citations from the Constitution of Belize that backs up or that lend support to the reason and rationale for this particular case that we're about to discuss further. And some of the citations goes as follows. For example, in Part 1 of the Constitution of Belize, Section 1 and Section 2, Subsection 1, as well as Part 2 of the Constitution, Section 6, Subsection 1, and Section 16, Subsection 1, 2, and Section 20, Subsection 1, 2, 3, all the way through 8, as well as Part 6 of the Constitution, Subsection 88, and Section 88, and Section 89, and Section 90, and Section 91, as well as Part 7 of the Constitution, Subsection 95 of the Constitution of Belize. So I went on to say, Belize Constitution citation Part 1, Section 1, and Section 2 reads as follows. As regards to the state of Belize, Section 1, Subsection 1 reads as follows. Belize shall be a sovereign democratic state of Central America in the Caribbean region. I think I prefaced that in my earlier comments, okay? And this is how the Constitution speaks to that particular point, or how it addressed that point, right? This is part of the Constitution of Belize. So those reading that I did just now is exactly what comes out of Section 1, the first section of the Constitution, Part 1, as regards to dealing with what the state of Belize is, or the country of Belize is. I went on further to also stipulate Section 2, or cite Section 2 of the Constitution, where it speaks to the Constitution as being the supreme law of Belize. It reads as follows. Section 2, Subsection 1. This Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution, that other law will or shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. That is that the Constitution is the law and supreme law of the land, and it allows for modification of the Constitution, and those modifications are done through the Congress of the country, the House of Representatives. It first starts off in the cabinet, where the leader of government business, for example, in the cabinet as being the prime minister, is the person that assents to or authorizes constitutional changes that the cabinet members may discuss and want to make. The prime minister brings the matter to the House. After it's discussed and put into some legal format or some written format, they vote for it in the House, and majority carries the day. So then, after that is voted on, it's assented to by the Governor General. It's sent over to the Governor General for her. In this case, we have a Governor General who is a lady, Ms. Salam, for her to assent. That is that she should look at those laws, have legal guidance as regards to the validity and legality of those laws, then she should assent to allowing that law to come into place as a legal part of our constitution. But many a times she assents to laws or documents that does not comport to the constitutional requirements. And there's a lot of reason for that. One, she does not have of her own accord a constitutional legal body or mind or person who reviews these things from her vantage point or from her responsibility. What she has is the Attorney General who works for the Prime Minister to be her own advisor as well, which to me is not adequate, because the Attorney General cannot serve those two different masters. The Prime Minister may want to do something that is wrong, gets his colleagues in cabinet to go along with him. There are times when they don't go along with him, but most of the times they go along with him. Then he gets an opportunity to go and take that matter to the House, where they have not only just a majority as is required for most of the laws, but they have a super majority. That is to say, they have the highest threshold for some of the most critical parts of the Constitution as a threshold to be overcome. When you have a super majority, you can overcome those thresholds, and you can change certain other parts of the law that are harder to change just with a bare majority. But then, when the Attorney General goes to, when that matter is passed in the House, because they have such a wide majority, and is sent to the Governor General for her ascension, the Governor General has to come right back to the Prime Minister's body as the Attorney General of the country that gives her advice, her legal advice. That shouldn't be. She should have an independent legal authority that could tell her when she needs to put a stop to something that the Prime Minister is trying to get done. And I'll give you an example of that. I think I should go ahead and just give you an example of that for right now. In our system of governance, we have a head of state, like most other countries. The only difference with our country is that our head of state is not locally elected, locally born, or have any local control, or the local people have any control over who is to be that head of state. We have an inherited head of state that initially started out by the Belizean people them in the old Buccaneer days, them entering into alliance with the British to help them protect our country against the other neighboring countries who were trying to take us over. And because of that alliance that we entered into, later on, many years after, the alliance became such that we became a protectorate of the English system. And still, until Independence Day, we were in that status. And the independence that we got was a qualified, or what you say, a conditional independence. It wasn't an independence like a republic, which is now what the present government is trying to turn us into. We got a conditional independence, with the British still maintaining our defense posture. And in that defense posture, it came after a period of time that we should have then had grown enough, after 40 years of independence, we should have been in a position mature enough then to have our own military, our own defense assets, even if we have to finance it with loans or with money from abroad that people give us or however. But we should have had a means of defense. Now, our country, the size of our country is about the size of San Salvador or El Salvador. Okay? Yeah. It's about the size of El Salvador, the landmass, a little bit bigger than San Salvador, or a little bit bigger than El Salvador. Okay? San Salvador is the capital city of El Salvador. And every once in a while I'm talking and I'm mixing them up. But in El Salvador, they have like, I think about 7 million people. Imagine that contrast to what Belize have. A little under 5,000, a little over 5, a little under 500,000 people. Okay? Compare that to 7 million approximately. Let's say 6.5, 7 million. Okay? That's like 14 times as much in the same area or in a smaller area. Because like I said, El Salvador is a little bit smaller than Belize. Going back to the point of our country being taken chance of by our own leaders, both in both the two mass parties that have governed our country since independence. They have both been treacherous and undermining this national security integrity of our country. And they play hanky-panky with Guatemala, which is a bellicose country, who claims our country and has been making that claim ever since they became independent. They have always had avarice towards our country. They have always been jealous about our property and our country, and have always wanted to take over our country. In fact, they have it in their constitution to say that Belize belongs to them and they will get it by reason or by force. I lived 7 years in Guatemala, and that's what I was taught while I was there and the schools that I used to attend. And that's what's been taught to every Guatemalan. According to their constitution, Belize belongs to them and they will get it by reason or by force. Well, so far they have attempted a few times to try and take it by force. They were not successfully moving forward and achieving that objective. But they have been successful so far in their effort to overpopulate our country with people from migrating from their country into our country. That is that, like I said earlier, Belize has about 500,000 people, plus or minus, Guatemala has about 16 million people, which you say is approximately 30 times as much. So what they do is they encourage their people to migrate into our country, some of it legally and most of it illegally, and to squat on the lands and to take it over. And our government facilitates them. They provide for them everything that they don't provide for the local-born Belizeans. That's how treacherous they are. Anybody would hear me say that for the first time, if they hadn't known that to be the fact, would say that that doesn't even make sense. It don't sound correct. But it's worse than that. These guys help bring in the people. In fact, not long ago we got the Prime Minister on tape, in his own words, talking to some of the Guatemalans them that he wanted to bring over for the election, so he can win the election in the Cayo district. But I'm getting. I think I should leave that particular topic for another time, no, because I'm intruding on my presentation that I had here, and I always have a tendency to go off. When something is salient or when I bring up a critical point, I want to clarify it or explain it so that people are not left wondering what is it I was talking about or how come that connects to what I was trying to say. If you indulge me, I would like to go back to the focus of the program for tonight, because it's all written out and I'm just straying away from it because I'm getting a little emotional in trying to convey or say more things than I'm able to say with just one note. I only have one note. So please Like I say, I always keep apologizing for it because I know it's a bad habit of mine. But I'm having so much information inside my head. I'm trying to pump it all out, and sometimes, I have to remember to be cogent and save some of the material for some other future time. I can't say it all in one program. And by getting distracted, and I make the program disjointed because I do want to focus on how I had it written up. Uh, so I read the part about the Constitution being supreme law of the land, and that if any other law that the lawmakers they make that is not consistent with the Constitution, then those laws are considered as being null and void. And they make those laws and they still try to implement them. And they end up victimizing a lot of people. But they don't make the laws to keep them in check and for them to stop stealing the assets of the people and stop misappropriating the assets of the people and privatizing the people's public assets unto themselves under the form of credit that they never end up paying for. So we do need to have UNCOC in place. And they refuse to put it in place. Every time when they want to get elected, they go promising that they will, we're going to put UNCOC in place because we got to stop all this crime and all these things that these white-collar crimes and the stealing of the public assets, but they never follow through because they don't want to get caught in their own nest. I'll read another portion here, for example, Part 2 of the Constitution of Belize, Section 6, which deals with equal representation, no, with equality under the law. And then I'll deal with 6.1 as well as subsection 16, section 16 and subsection 1, 2, and section 20, which authorizes the rights to get court review, judicial review, in issues that relates to derogation and or bastardization or violation of people's fundamental or constitutional rights under Section 3 of the Constitution all the way through Section 19 of the Constitution of Belize. I'll read a portion that speaks about equal protection of the law, which comes under Section 6 as I previously noted or cited. Section 6, subsection 1 reads as follows: all persons are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to the equal protection of the law. That's the Constitution of Belize, Section 6, subsection 1. I go on to read, it says protection from discrimination. Under Section 16 of the Constitution of Belize, it says, subsection 1 reads as follows: subject to provision of subsection 4 and subsection 5 and subsection 7 of this section, that is same section 16 that we're reading of, no law shall be, no law shall make any provisions that is discriminatory either of itself or in its effect. That goes back to the original point that I mentioned earlier, where I said that when the lawmakers, they make law, they're empowered to make law, but those laws have to come into the constraint, within the boundaries of the constraint of the Constitution. This is what it's talking about. No law let me read. Says, subject to the provisions of subsection 4, 5, and 6, 7 of this particular section, it says, no law shall make any provisions that is discriminatory in itself, either in of itself or in its effect. So the lawmakers or the people in our Congress or House of Representatives cannot arbitrarily and capriciously decide one day that they're going to make a law that contravenes the Constitution and it should be legal or constitutional. Because once they make a law that violates the Constitution, it's violative of the Constitution and it's supposed to be considered according to Section 2, subsection 1, as being null and void. The Constitution speaks for itself. It clarifies these matters. So but these people still go and make bastardized laws and they try to use the powers of the state and the facilities of the state to implement those very bastardized laws. And they don't take themselves to jail for criminal contempt of the people by breaking the law. But they take somebody and go and steal a piece of bread or maybe a kind of food or something from somewhere else, and they lock them up for months. So what should happen to these jackals? They should be locked up for years. I'd like to read section 16, subsection 2, which goes as follows. Subject to the provisions of sections 6, section 7, and section 8 of this section, no person shall be treated in a discriminatory manner by any person or authority. Okay? So our laws are very clear when it comes to the issue of discrimination and that type of stuff when it comes to the violation of your rights, your fundamental rights, your God-given rights, your constitutionally imbued rights, your natural rights, your civil rights, And these jackals still go ahead and violate them. And they come and tell you, okay, well, that is the law. They're enforcing what they put out as the law. When in fact, those laws are violative of the Constitution and are supposed to be considered as null and void. But most people don't have money to hire a lawyer to go and fight their case for them. So they get taken advantage of with these bastardized things. Okay, I'm getting interruptions right now. People trying to get my attention on certain things. I'm distracted enough already, as it were, and I'm diverting. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and read the rest of this. Okay. Enforcement of protective provisions. How you go about getting enforcement of these protective provisions? Our Constitution gives us, under Section 20 of the Constitution, the authority and the demand that the Supreme Court, under judicial review, if anybody feels aggrieved, they can go to the Supreme Court and lodge a complaint. Of course, you have to have a lawyer to do those things. You can't just do it as a single individual because the process, procedures, and protocols boxed you out. So for all intents and purposes, it is said that your rights are protected. But you can only get those rights vindicated and protected if you have the means to afford it, which is unfair. Because most people don't have it. They can't afford it. 68% poverty level in a country like ours. Not too many people can afford that. To find money to survive and still find money to get a lawyer to go and fight, things that the government is trying to do to you that they're not empowered to do and they're not supposed to be doing. But they do it because they know you can't fight back. Let me read this stuff. Under Section 20, subsection 1, it reads as follows. Please pay attention to this particular reading because it's kind of convoluted. Every time I read it, I always give this advice ahead, this warning. It's kind of convoluted, but it's very important and it's very critical. if any person alleges, okay, I'll read that again. If any person alleges that any of the provisions of Section 3, as I pointed out, where our constitutional rights and powers are for the general populace, from Section 3 all the way through Section 19, inclusive of this Constitution, if any person alleges that their rights under those sections has been or is being currently or is likely to be contravened in relations to him or her, or in the case of a person, someone else who is not that same individual, a person who is detained, or if any other person alleges such a contravention in relations to the detained person, then without prejudice to any other uh, authority or with respect to the same matter which is lawfully available, that person or the person or the other person may apply to the Supreme Court or the High Court of Belize for judicial review. Okay? So, as stated in the beginning of this Section 20 and subsection 1 of Section 20, it says, if any person alleges, see how critical that is? A person just have to feel threatened by the conduct or behavior of someone else. They have a right to go to the Supreme Court to seek redress. But like I said, having a right to do something doesn't mean that you get it done. If you're unable, or you don't have the ability to finance it or pay for it. So we got to be careful, which is why these guys, they act like mobsters, right? And they treat us with such level of contempt. Section 20, subsection 2 reads as follows. The Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. That is to say, so long as you take a matter to the court is empowered and has the right to deal with that matter and to render a verdict or a decision on that particular matter, whether for or against you or anybody else. The Supreme Court have original jurisdiction for any matter that is civil or any matter that is criminal, and matters that are even constitutional, as in the case where this issue came out of, where we started off first part of the conversation. We had a case where that was brought by some civilians against the government for the government breaking and bastardizing the Constitution and refusing to be in compliance of the Constitution. So Section 22 specifically says that the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. And then in another section that we might get a chance to read later on, we're going to see that it doesn't only have original jurisdiction, it has unlimited original jurisdiction. That is another state or stage above, a more powerful position, right? That justifies them in being able to exercise additional powers. Under paragraph A of that same section, it reads as follows. They shall have original jurisdiction to hear and determine any application made by any persons in pursuance of subsection 1 above of this section, as well as paragraph B, reads as follows: they shall have original jurisdiction to determine any question raised in the case of any person who is who is referred to it. The it being then in this case the Supreme Court, in pursuance of subsection 3 of this section. There is another little part here that I want to read before I get to it. It says, and the Supreme Court may make such declarations and orders, as well as issue such writ and give such directions as it may consider appropriate for the purposes of enforcing or securing the enforcement of any of the provisions of this section, that is section 3 all the way through 19, inclusive of this Constitution. So there are some other portions here that I would like to get into, but I'll skip for right now, or for me, either for tonight or for just right now. And I would like to go and take up section 95 of the Constitution, because it follows on or give additional support to what I just read just now as regards to the court. In section 95, in part 7 of the Belize Constitution, where section 95 is found, it relates to the Belize Supreme Court or the High Court of Belize. And it says under 95, section 95, subsection 1, all the way through subsection 4, of which I'm not going to read all of them, inclusive. It says, the Supreme Court shall have unlimited, remember I mentioned that extra phrase in regards to not only just have original jurisdiction, but it has unlimited original jurisdiction to hear and determine any civil or criminal proceedings. And I will add, in addition to criminal and civil, I will add constitutional matters under any law, and such jurisdiction and powers as may be conferred unto it by the Constitution or any other law. That will not be the end of tonight's presentation, but it will be the end of those citations for right now. Like I said, I skipped out quite a bit of it just now because I looked at my clock and I'm going to get very tied up and run out of time maybe if I pursue further on these citations, which I can also come back and read on another occasion. There's another issue that I want to deal with or speak about in regards to why this case came up. Just let me get out of this for a second, please. Okay. Okay. Give me a second. I need to go up here and find something that I need. Hurry. No. Okay, no, that's not the one I want. I need the other one. Arguments of flux, and I need the fifth or the 6th. I need to go to the fifth. Okay, here we go. Found it. Okay. I had to search just now for what I needed, and I promised earlier in the program that I was going to try and give you a little inkling as to what I was trying to talk about at that time when I was making reference to a particular case. And I just want to cite what the case parameters were, who brought the case and who was involved with the case, who the lawyers were, who the judge was, and who the plaintiffs were, you know. And so let me just get into a little bit of that with the rest of the time that I have. I'll dedicate to this particular section. Um, it reads here as follows. In the High Court of Belize, AD 2024, in the Supreme Court of Belize, which is now um, renamed as the High Court of Belize. Oh, and by the way, there's a reason why they rename it the High Court of Belize, okay? It was always known as the Supreme Court of Belize because that was um, the highest level of the court that we can go to in, in Belize proper. But our constitution allows us for having what you call high, a Supreme Court, and the rulings from that particular Supreme Court could be appealed to the Belize Appellate Court, and the rulings from the Belize Appellate Court could be appealed to our regional court, which is the Caribbean Court of Justice. Before then, before the Caribbean Court of Justice came into existence, our highest ruling would come from the British Privy Council Court. And some smart head decided, okay, we need to disassociate ourselves from the British because we need to start getting closer to Guatemala and start putting the 17 proposals into place and align ourselves more with the Guatemalans who are our mortal enemy than aligning ourselves with people who have kept us safe for over 100 years. A lot of people are not paying attention to how these things are working out or how it's been, what are the reasons and basis for them. But nevertheless, let me not get into that again because I'll probably end up straying, and I don't have much time left. I see it's 117 right now, 117 plus, and I need to cut off at about 130 plus or minus a minute or so. Why I brought up that point just now about uh, how our Supreme Court and Appellate Court and Final Court of Jurisdiction, either having been before the English Privy Court or now the Caribbean Court of Justice has been the last step for us now, is that our present government and past governments have wanted us to become a republic of Belize. Okay? They don't like how it is right now. They don't like the fact that they can haul and pull the system the way they want to do it on a personal level. And they want to be exculpated by any local court who then becomes our final court. In other words, they want to have control over our court systems as well. They don't abide by what we call the separations of powers. They are the one who hire the Supreme Court judges, and they're the one who review these Supreme Court judges' CVs and credentials and court cases and experiences, and decide which one of them they want to bring in, if that person is compatible to their expectation, and they bring them in on a contract, hoping that they won't rule against whatever the government position is, so that every time when there's an issue with having to sue the government don't have to worry because the Supreme Court judges presumably would be in their pocket. I mean, for someone who loves the law so much, I shouldn't have to be resorting to that type of clarification or explanation. But according to some people, facts be damned, so they go ahead and do all these things, and I have to turn around and comment on them when I shouldn't have to be made to comment on them like that. but for clarity and for people to understand why is it that some things work out the way it works out. Unless you tell them up front what is going on behind the scene, they will never grasp what is it that's happening. They only know it's happening. But I'll go on again, and like I said, I always have this bad tendency of straying. So I hope that by straying, I'm providing additional information that you would not get otherwise, though, right? So there's a purpose to that type of madness. Uh, in the High Court of Belize, AD 2024, you had a claim that was brought under claim number. It's a civil claim, by the way, claim number 730 of 2024, number one. In the matter of the Constitution of Belize and in the matter of Section 1 of the Constitution, Section 6 of the Constitution, Section 20, Section 90, and Section 95. Now, if you notice the way this case was presented, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections of the Constitution that were brought to support it. If you notice the stuff that I read to you earlier that I had put together, you had quite a few more than those, right? In other words, the intent when you submit a constitutional question and or a constitutional correction, it is incumbent on you, the person submitting the case, to provide as much muscle from the Constitution itself. In other words, as much citations as is possible. The less citations you provide, the less strength your case has. So, anyhow, let me not impugn this particular effort here, and let's go on. And I'm just trying to read for you so you can get a flavor, as I initially offered, for you to get a flavor of what the mechanics on this and the process was while we arrived at where we were when I first started my comments for tonight and the readings that I was doing on the citations. Because at any minute now, like I said, the judge is supposed to issue his final ruling on that particular hearing or case. And well, let me not get into all of that. I mentioned it a few times before, and just let me leave it at that. Time is running out. I'm within 7 minutes plus right now, so let me do what I can with that 7 minutes. So I mentioned these are some of the citations that they presented for this case, and in addition, it says in the matter of the first schedule of the Representation of the People's Act, ROPA, Cap 9, as well as another citation here in the matter of 22nd of Law Revisions Act, Cap 3, which all unto themselves jointly form the citations that the case was revolving around. And it explains between whom the case was being dealt with. No? That is that between the plaintiffs, in this case, Mr. Rudy Levinsky Wade, Mr. Hubert Dennis Enriquez, Mr. Paul Marcel Morgan, Mr. William Mejia, Mr. Godwin Bernard Sutherland, Mr. Antonio Giovanni de la Fuente, and also, last but not least, Mr. Roberto Antonio Lopez, as registered voters and against the Election and Boundaries Commission of Belize as and or represented by the chairman, Mr. Oscar A. Sabido, SC, meaning Senior Counsel, and the Attorney General of Belize. So you can see readily that, as I stipulated earlier in my original or my earlier comments, it was a group of law-abiding citizens, no rich people, just regular people having to take on the government, the Attorney General, and all the other, the Solicitor General, the Deputy Solicitor General, the consuls, them, and two of the biggest law firms in the country, to go up against one single lawyer that these people could have afforded to help them with their case. And still, they were being taken advantage of with all kind of mechanisms and all kind of shenanigans that were being played out, to the extent where even the judge could be found culpable. Not for errors or omissions or oversight, but for misguiding the very Section 95 that I wrote. That's why I read those things before, because I wanted people to get an understanding of, when I refer to them, what is it I'm referring to? How these people haul and pull the legal systems and play all kind of shenanigan games and turn around and throw a case that needed to be attended to adequately. The case that was brought by the defendant, or by the not the defendant, by the plaintiff or the complainant, was a constitutional redress case. That is, that they wanted the court to mandate that the government correct its misbehavior, its scofflaw conduct, and abide by the Constitution. And the end result is that the judge throws out the case without dealing with those matters on a technicality that the judge herself entertained and allowed the plaintiff to enter into a side agreement with the government, because the government had confessed that yes, they were in agreement, that they were in violation of the Constitution, and all they wanted was the time to go back and correct it. And that's all the plaintiff was asking for the court to do: make a ruling to tell the government to go and get its job done. Instead, the court encourage them to enter into a side agreement where they're going to turn around and let the government off the hook, so the government to go ahead and go do what they needed to do. And when the government went and didn't do what they needed to do, and the people come back and complain to the judge going to tell them, for all intents and purposes, get out of my court, I don't want to see you anymore. By basically tell them they were the one that were at fault for accepting and entering into a side agreement, which she classified at that time as a tumbling agreement. Now remember, there are many different kind of classifications of agreement that you could enter into, but she took it to the maximum and classified the people, their agreement, as a tumbling agreement, which then barred them from being able to account to her with 40-odd pages of citations from different other cases to show that she was valid in her assessment. To penalize these people, to kill these people with the case, to throw or knock their case out of the system, in order for the government not to have a ruling against the government, or for her not to have to make a ruling against the government in compliance of what the Constitution says that she was mandated to do, and the government was as well mandated to do. So she said, because these people entered into a tumbling agreement, she couldn't help them anymore. For all intents and purposes, they gave up their rights to pursue or continue the case, while exculpating the government and allowing the government to continue violating the Constitution, and the very part of the Constitution that the people were bringing to have redress. So they turned the legal system and the Constitution on its head. I'm sorry. I'm running out of time. I'm at 29. I have less than a minute. Please bear with me. I'll close this off right now in a couple of minutes' time, or at least about. Let me go a little further on a couple. Probably within 5 minutes, I'll close off. I just wanted, like I said, to read some of those things. And quickly, I want to read who the lawyers were, okay? Wait, let me see. So those are the defendant, and then I don't have who the lawyers were here right now. I might have to go to another page. And no, I don't have those right now. So I'll just have to give up in regards to who the lawyers were in that particular case. But I can tell you that Miss Sharon Pitts was one of the lawyers, the only lawyer who volunteered, well, not volunteered, but who offered her services to these people because nobody else wanted to take on that challenge to go up against the government and their deep pocket. And the lawyers on behalf of the government was the Attorney General, who hired extra lawyers to go and represent him and the Prime Minister and the election and boundaries and the, um, the Governor General. And like I said, they went and they hired the most expensive and biggest law firms in the country, all with the idea of intimidating those people who were trying to get them to do the right thing, which they should have been doing in the first place and didn't have to spend all that money to try and bastardize the process in order for them to continue violating the Constitution and the laws of the country and the rights of the people. Because what they were doing was basically not having a proper redivisioning of the electorates, and they had some divisions that had 2,000 plus or minus voters, and other divisions that had 10,000 plus or minus voters. How the hell can you say you're complying with the Constitution, which requires you to have nearly as equal an amount of voters in each constituency or in each division, by having one division with 2,000 and the other one with 10,000? That's not nearly as equal. And they agree that they're in violation. But so what? They don't want to do nothing about it. They have never had an interest in doing anything about it, like I said, from 1996 till now. I've come to the end of my time. I'm riding on extra time right now. I just need to close off. I can't do much more of this. There's only so much time we have in each program, and I got to abide as close as possible to the time limitation. So maybe next week we'll probably take up some more of this. But people need to know. People need to understand. Because only when you know and understand these things can you justifiably make the necessary effort to demand and to get accountability from these jackals that we are dealing with. Again, thank you for tuning into tonight's program. I have a few people who, I guess after I come off the program, I'll just get on Facebook and I'll just respond to their questions and statements that they were making during the course of the program. I'm here running the program tonight, like I said, originally on my own, and therefore I have to do the best I could, and I hope that you, the general public, especially Belizeans at home and abroad, will have derived some positive public benefit from this program presented tonight, and will be in a better position to be able to understand what is happening. And you can go back to the constitutional citations that I made, check it in your own copy of the Constitution, and see whether or not what I presented or what I said, is adequate enough in terms of the truth. And then you have a right to make your own decision in terms of what part you are going to play as a voter. Because they're coming to you with this PCC commission that they have running around right now, spending millions of dollars. They're going to come to you and ask you what you want to have in your stuff or what you want to take out. And for all intents and purposes, they're not coming back anymore because they have already given or submitted to the Prime Minister a report, which they should have actually validated from you before they give it to the Prime Minister. Because the Prime Minister have in his back pocket other things that he wants to include in that report to change the Constitution. They don't just want to change bits and pieces of it as they are currently authorized to do. They want to eviscerate the whole Constitution and come up with something new that is more pliable to them being able to use for their new Republic of Belize that they intend to have. Get rid of our current system, get rid of the legal system, get rid of the Governor General, and get rid of the head of state, and vote themselves or have the people vote them to become our own locally elected head of state, which I wouldn't see anything wrong with that if we weren't dealing with jackals, hyenas, and vultures and vampires and people who are acting like snakes? How can you have any confidence in these people doing any better than they're doing currently when they are under restraints? I yield. Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. We'll probably pick this up some other time on some other date because tonight my time is expired and I don't want the program to be cut off and I'm still talking, so I'll just say good night for right now. God bless. Belizeans at home and abroad. Take care. Please, over the holiday, be considerate of yourself and your family members and your friends and other people because when you get into an accident and don't end up getting back home, your family will pay for it. They will pay for both your funerals or maybe your medical bills, or they might end up having to pay for all the responsibilities that you, because of one night drinking, and end up getting hurt or killed and can't provide for your children or your family. They will have to provide for themselves after you're dead and gone. Maybe that's a solution to your personal problems, but it doesn't solve the problems that are left behind. So Belizeans at home and abroad, please, too much accidents is happening on our roads. Too much craziness, too much drinking, too much, nobody's telling you to stop. Just slow down. Good night and goodbye. Love you guys. God bless.